At the ITS World Congress 2022, the intelligent transportation community gathers in Los Angeles to discuss the latest innovation and research in intelligent transportation systems. The meeting program explores a wide range of topics from connected and automated vehicles to road safety, sustainable transport solutions to equitable transportation and much more. And ITS TV is right here to show you a glimpse of the greener, smarter, safer transportation of the future. Welcome back to the Los Angeles Convention Center and episode 4 of ITS TV 2022. Delegates are gathering for the final days of the meeting, and we're taking a look at equity in transportation and leadership. Congress this year. As you can see, we have a lot of captivating content on today's show, so stay tuned for our first interview. You're watching ITS TV. And joining us now is Margaret Anderson Kelleher. She is the Director of Public Works at Minneapolis and also the former Commissioner of the Minnesota Department of Transportation. Good to see you.
Thank you for having me this morning.
Of course, I hope you're having a great Congress. You're actually tackling a very important topic, sustainability.
Yes.
What will you be addressing specifically?
So I'm going to talk a little bit about how at the local level, the level closest to people, we are really working through a family of plans, as we call them in Minneapolis. So we have a transportation action plan, a transportation equity plan, a sustainability plan, and a Vision Zero plan. And we actually see ITS as the kind of key that weaves these areas together to really be able to deliver on particularly sustainability and equity in our community. We have done a racial equity analysis on that transportation action plan to be able to know where we're deploying the tools that we have available today to really improve people's lives.
There's a lot of challenges to executing some of these plans though, right?
Yes.
As you know, working in government on different levels. What do you think is the biggest issue and how can we overcome them?
Yeah, well, I think that we've had a lot of progress this year on one of the biggest issues, but we're not through this, which is actually the resource issues. So, for example, in Minneapolis, we have 800 intersections that are signalized in some way, and 200 of those now have sort of smart signaling on them. And that's an exciting thing because that really helps us be able to move that traffic and vehicle faster, more sustainably through a community or neighborhood. But the hardest part of that is we're also on a fiscally constrained plan over 20 years. And so we're really looking for ways to maximize here in the US, the federal monies coming through that will be able to deliver on the plan.
I know there were also some issues with maybe having the regulatory framework in place and some of that infrastructure. Are we moving in the right direction? Are you seeing that change and open up, not just in your area, but across the country?
Yeah, I see that in Minneapolis itself, people are pretty open. The policy leaders are pretty open to the use of technology to advance the goals that we have. Goals of sustainability, of equity, that's key. Now, I will say that sometimes at the state level, when I was Commissioner of Transportation, you would see that we could bump up against, maybe old sections of the law that were not allowing for as much experimentation. And I say that, you need to run pilots and experiments to be able to see how things are going and then be able to implement from there. And sometimes we'd run into some roadblocks of that, which could be really a problem.
Yeah, and so finally, some best practices that people can come away with from your session and just in general going forward.
Well, and in my background, I also ran a technology association. So I have a deep love for using technology in new ways. But in my role as Public Works Director, it's not to use technology just for technology's sake. It's really towards these larger goals, the larger goals of having a more sustainable, lower emission community, to be able to help people see. We have a goal to move 3 out of 5 trips that people make in a week into walking, biking, scooting, being able to take transit. All of those things come because we're able to use better technology, things like signal prioritization for buses. Now that is something that I think is really exciting, and it really matches back to those important plans for us, our Transportation Action Plan with a racial equity lens on it, the ability to have a sustainability plan and a Vision Zero plan for safety.
Yeah, all great things. I think everyone would back all of these important initiatives. So thank you so much, Margaret, for joining us today. Looking forward to the plenary.
Thanks.
And some great tips and advice out of that as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Next up, we're talking to some of the participants of the ITS Gender Equity and Transport Workshop to learn more about different ways to improve gender equity in the transportation sector.
When I think about gender inequities that exist today, it starts from the foundation of how we plan our service. And it's really planned around the 9-to-5 commute that was really focused on men and not women. And as we look at how women travel and men travel, there's actually a difference. And as a result, we really don't have service generally that meets needs of everyone.
I think one of the things that we have seen and continue to see, and COVID exacerbated that, is a lot of time women take on additional roles in the household. It could be childcare, it could be care of an adult, of a parent, it could be taking the groceries, healthcare. So they have additional aspects that they have to do, often called trip chaining, where they have to do one thing after another, and all of that is on transit. And that's where we have to think about who are the customers that we're trying to serve and where are they coming from, and all the different aspects that they have to do when using the public transit system.
We actually realized that we collect a lot of data. We ask gender information, but guess what? We never disaggregated the data to analyze it, right? So in doing that, we have learned so much about our ridership, and it was so important because the majority of our riders pre-pandemic were women, and yet we weren't being intentional about their needs.
We have a multimodal system called CODA Plus that has run over 65,000 trips to help with that first and last mile aspect. In addition, at CODA, we have rolled out the mobile app that allows you for better trip planning and how can you understand all the parts of your trip. And one of the aspects that we're really the most proud of that we've done recently with our mobile app is we've rolled out fare capping. And once you hit that limit, you are no longer charged. So these are some ways that technology has allowed us to advance things that we hadn't been able to do in the past.
At present, even though women in the United States comprise over 50% of the current working age population, we are only 15% of the transportation sector. It's incredibly important that we advance more women into leadership positions, particularly when we talk about creating more inclusive transit systems as a whole. Their voices bring a different perspective, and one way to achieve that goal is simply making sure that hiring panels are diverse. And it's important for females to see role models through social modeling and to see what they can obtain within this field. In terms of our programming, we really recruit participants from a diverse background, focusing on underrepresented populations and females. We also like to ensure that we're bringing students and other people in the pipeline to opportunities that increase their socioeconomic status.
A few years ago, we actually created an internal Women and Girls Governing Council of actual employees, women and men employees, to look at Metro as an employer, as a service provider, and as a catalyst for economic development with the gender lens, identifying unanticipated gender bias in our job descriptions, removing those barriers, and increasing the number of women who apply for jobs at Metro. I'm happy to say that 2/3 of my leadership team is all women. That's unprecedented. And it's because they were the best, but also we were intentional to make sure as we're recruiting that we are wanting to have a gender balance of candidates to choose from.
I think it's always helpful to make sure that you have multiple people at the table, because everyone comes with their own perspectives and backgrounds, and they know their own life experiences. So the more people of every type of diversity that we can have, that helps bring the perspective of the customers that we're serving. and that will help design our systems for the future.
And joining us now is Tux Omishakin. He is the Secretary of the California State Department of Transportation. Good to see you.
Good to see you as well. Thanks for having me on.
And you are actually focused on a very important topic, equitable transportation. Tell us, what are the biggest issues you're finding here in California?
Well, for many years, from a transportation standpoint, the way we haven't invested in a way that is thinking about every single person that uses the system. So it's been heavily focused on people who probably mostly drive, not people who may need to use other modes like walk, bike, or use public transportation. So we're trying to double back and correct some of those errors and some of those mistakes from the past. And when we made those mistakes in the past, by the way, we also built a highway system that cut off many underserved communities interstate. And so we cut them off physically, and that also meant harm sometimes from a social standpoint and even from a health standpoint, because people with all those cars and the trucks driving through their communities, that meant they were breathing in that poor air, that bad air, but also their access was increasingly limited because of the way we designed and built the highway system. So we're changing that in California. It's a new day, it's a new dawn. Have a Governor Newsom, who's heavily invested in equity, and we're making those investments happen through CalSTA, my organization, and Caltrans, High Speed Rail, all the organizations under it, and of course the partnership with the federal government as well, the Biden-Harris administration connection.
What are the biggest challenges you're finding as you're trying to fix and retrofit some of the things that have already been in place for many, many years?
That's exactly it, is that we've built the system for so many years, for 60 to 70 years. A lot of the major highway investments in the country came down in the 1950s, the mid-50s, and we followed that same pattern for the next 50 to 60, 70 years. And now we have an awakening. There's a bit of a renaissance in our industry. We now understand that what our jobs ultimately is to help people across the board. Not how do you help cars get from one destination to the next destination as quickly as possible, but how do you help people get from one place to the next as safely as possible. So that's been the challenge.
Mm-hmm. And equity is such a big part of that diversity, inclusivity, different perspectives. I guess going forward, what are some of the recommendations or things that you would want to see come out of this industry?
Well, I think the important thing right now is that we're having the right conversations. And those conversations are going from a lot of talk to finally policy and regulation. And from that to resources, meaning dollars, are being put in place to ultimately to implement a lot of the ideas. A few years ago, it was kind of taboo, to be honest with you, to talk about how we've made some poor decisions from a transportation standpoint when it comes to equity. But now that has completely changed. Most people in leadership or middle management or lower level, entry level in our business, they believe in this, they're on board. So it's leading to policy, it's leading to investment. Governor Newsom recently put in place a $47 billion multi-year transportation budget. Outside of the gas tax that we traditionally get, an additional $47 billion. And in doing that, in spending that money, we need to be wise to make sure that we're doing that work through an equity lens for all people at all levels, all genders, all economic status, this economic status that they may be on. So it's an exciting time, probably the most exciting time in the history of the transportation and technology profession.
Very good, and we're looking forward to seeing what comes out of Caltrans. Thank you so much, Tux. Good to see you.
Absolutely, good to see you as well. Thanks for having us on.
On ITS TV, we feature creative, innovative, and forward-thinking organizations from around the world that help propel intelligent transportation systems into the future. Let's take another look at our organizations featured this year. We're ITS TV, your daily news show featuring interviews and discussions on hot topics in intelligent transportation systems from this year's ITS World Congress. You can catch us around the convention center here in LA, in select hotel rooms, on the ITS website, social media, and YouTube. With new content each day of the Congress, make sure to keep watching. Now we're talking to you, the delegates, to find out what you enjoyed most at this year's Congress.
Yeah, we're really excited this week, actually. This is actually the launch of us joining the American marketplace. So we've got implementations in 25 countries around the world, but this is our real first showcase of technology in America. We've already won our first project, which has been fantastic. So now we're excited about sharing this technology with the rest of the US.
The conversations are changing because you're starting to see, industries that typically maybe didn't talk to one another. They were siloed, whether that's the automotive industry or the municipalities responsible for smart transportation, or the electric utilities now that play a key role in the electrification of transportation. You're starting to see these industries start to interact with each other and have conversations that weren't happening before.
Well, I love seeing all the innovation. It is very nice to see that everyone's working on the same problems, coming up with innovative solutions to move our industry forward. I like seeing how the companies are developing their products. Some of the products that we see in our transportation space have been along for a very long time, and so I love seeing the presentations of them showing what they're working on and how they're moving their technologies forward.
What I've loved most is actually is meeting people and meeting fellow professionals throughout the world. Is something that you don't really get to do every day unless you work for an international company. So yes, I'm enjoying the networking part of it, and of course the sessions are really interesting. But the networking for me is the most important part of the conference.
The biggest thing has been able to reconnect with people. I feel like we've had, several years where we haven't been able to meet together. So I think reconnecting with people, meeting new people, but then just seeing what's being done out there. What are the new things? What are the new trends? What's some of the new technology that's coming down the road, and how are we going to implement these things? So some of the sessions has been great. Some of the speakers, just to hear, some of the concerns, where can we address some of these things? Safety being a big thing that we need to be a part of. So it's been really good to connect, but then to hear what's going on.
That's it for our final day here at the ITS World Congress 2022. We hope you enjoyed your time at the Congress and our content here at ITS TV. And don't forget, you can catch up on anything you've missed online on the ITS World Congress website, YouTube, and social media. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next year.